Hello, my name is Matthew, and I've been working my way through the Norton Anthology of English Literature, and I just read a portion of Robert Burton's The Anatomy of Melancholy, and I'm already pretty familiar with the work. The selection here is just a small part of just the introduction of the work. Um, Robert Burton was an incredibly smart person. He was a scholar and uh, extremely well read, and suffered from what we would call today depression. In his day, it was known as melancholy, as a medical term. And he decided to investigate. So he looked into himself. He looked into the world around him and the history um, that he read in his books, and everything that he's um, gotten from all of the books that he had read, and decided to focus on why and how he feels the way he feels. And so melancholy was this springboard to a vast encyclopedia of the knowledge this person, Robert Burton, has amassed in his lifetime. And I'll show you the copy that I have of the whole thing. And it's a giant, seemingly intimidating brick of a book. Initially, upon publication, it was popular. It had reprintings, and he went back to it and added to it throughout his life until we have the form that we have today. And it's amazing. It's an incredible inside view of the mind of a brilliant person. The topic of melancholy is just a springboard for him to go on about every topic that came to his mind, everything that he looked at, everything that he had read. It's full of excerpts and quotations that he just kind of pulls together. It really is like a compendium of all of his knowledge. What makes it great is when you get his voice, which comes straight away. This is not a dour, bland or stuffy work that's going to be like something that you have to suffer through. Instead, his voice rings through, and he has such a direct, immediate way of relating to you. He kind of pulls the drapes of all the formal decorum of scholastic or what's considered proper ways of writing, and instead is rough and raw and honest. And the great thing is that as you read it, you realize that he's being honest with himself, and he's relating that to you, and you get this human voice of a man wrestling with demons and melancholy, but all the other worries and considerations and joys and pleasures that this person has seen or experienced or read in his books. It's just amazing. I'll show you. I'll read to give you an idea of how kind of rough and raw and immediate his voice is, and how different it is from what you might expect from looking at a book like this. And especially if you're only reading the selection in the Norton Anthology, where everything up to this point in recent time that these writers are writing, there's a rigidness to their writing style. And Robert Burton is just brushing all of that away to do his best to communicate with you as clearly and as directly as he can. And he's talking about how can you be happy when you see the portion I'm going to read to you. How can you be happy when you look and see all of these terrible things and awful ways that people comport themselves and behave that succeed, where if you're someone that feels that you're a moral or ethical or rational minded person is not. And so he's listing all of the terrible things that you can see in the world. To see a withered face, a diseased, deformed, cankered complexion, a rotten carcass, a viperous mind, and Epicurean soul set out with orient pearls, jewels, diadems, perfumes, curious elaborate works, as proud of his clothes as a child is of his new coats, and a goodly person of an angel-like divine countenance, a saint, a humble mind, a meek spirit, clothed in rags, beg, and now ready to be starved, to see a silly, contemptible, sloven in apparel, ragged in his coat, polite in speech, of a divine spirit, wise, another neat in clothes, spruce, full of courtesy, empty of grace, wit, talk of nonsense. It's electric and invigorating. He's throwing all of these emotions and all the things that he can think about right at you. And there's no beating around the bush at all. Of course, when you look at this, you'd think that he is going to be long-winded, which it's not that it's not a part of the book, but it's alive, and he worked on this throughout his life, and so his attitudes change. His perception of the world changes, and there's a growth. It's an extremely human book. I almost would compare it to like the complete works of Montaigne, the essays of Montaigne, where between bound covers you get a complete portrait of not just a man, but the man's view of the world. And like I said, Robert Burton was a scholar and incredibly well read, and so it's also a commonplace book where he's pulling extracts, the things that were important to him, and just having quotes. He puts everything in the book, and it's a marvel. It's just absolutely astonishing to go through. I have not read this thing cover to cover, but it's one of those books that you can put at your bedside or put on a coffee table, nearly open up to any page, and be swept away by this brilliant mind who was trying to find an answer to himself. He was suffering depression, and it's not just focusing on the one thing that's making him sad, but looking around at the whole world around him and thinking, surely there must be a remedy. So I'll end there. I only read the very small portion in the Norton anthology, but I've read a lot of this book, and I've spent time with it for years. And I also highly recommend it. And also it's worth pointing out that Robert Burton has a devilish sense of humor. And it's because you're communicating with a real person that has, you know, a rounded set of emotions, and it's all laid out for you. Anyway, it's just brilliant. So, The Anatomy of Melancholy by Robert Burton. Let me know if you've read it or read portions of it, or if you've heard of it. Maybe um, it's intimidated you, or anything like that. So if you would like, leave a comment if you would like. And thank you for watching.